But Brandon, let's move on into our 6 through 15. And if you are checking us out on YouTube, hello, make sure to check out our 16 through 25 as well. Before we get into it, I'm going to throw out, make sure to rate and review the show on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, it's easy. Hit that rate. Tell us why you like listening to the podcast. Even if you're on YouTube, I know you have an iTunes account. Go over to it. Rate and review the podcast. It helps us. The good reviews help us get into more ear holes is how I'm going to explain it. More ear holes so that we can get into more people's heads and they can listen to the great content we have here at MVP. But Brandon, we started off with you. Start at number 15 and give us your 15 all the way to 6.
All right, number 15, the center from Maryland, Bruno Fernando. At 14, Sekou Demboya, the forward international player. At 13, Jonte Porter, the forward from Mizzou. At 12, Darius Garland, the guard from Vandy. At 11, Bol, the center from Oregon. At 10, DeAndre Hunter, the guard/forward from Virginia. At 9, Jackson Hayes, the center from Texas. At 8, Romeo Langford, the guard from Indiana. At 7, Cam Reddish, the forward from Duke. And at 6, Rui Hachimura, the forward from Gonzaga.
And quickly to go through mine, number 15, that international player from France, the forward Sekou Demboya. Then at 14, the guard out of USC, Kevin Porter Jr. Then at number 13, guard forward from the Kentucky Wildcats, Keldon Johnson. Then at number 12, Brandon Clark, the forward from the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Then at number 11, Jackson Hayes, the center from Texas. Then at 10, Darius Garland, the guard from Vandy. Then at number 9, Bol. I think I said that right. Bol. I keep saying Bol when I know it's Bol. Center from Oregon. Then Romeo Langford at 8, the guard from Indiana. Number 7, DeAndre Hunter, the guard forward from the Virginia Cavaliers. And then rounding it out at 6, Rui Hachimura, the forward from the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And Brandon, the first thing we're going to get into, this one will be the light conversation before we get into our 2 big deep dives of Cam Reddish and the centers in this year's draft. The first one I kind of want to throw out is kind of a package of Rui Hachimura and Brandon Clark, the guys from the Zags. And the reason why is, if you haven't already, make sure, I'm going to put it above Brandon and I's heads. The fast break, we kind of did a little comparison between Rui and Sekou Demboya. I was on the side of Sekou. Dave was a little bit on the fence. I was a Rui guy. Sean was a Sekou guy. Dave was on the bench, or on the fence.
On the fence.
About the whole thing. I want to ask you 2 questions. First off, because I already answered all of that in that fast break segment, so I'm going to leave it for them to click that if they want to hear what I have to say about Rui. First off, what are your thoughts about Rui? And then number 2, what are your thoughts about Brandon Clark? Because I'm not going to spoil where he is, but obviously he's in your top 5 because you did not say his name in either of these segments. What are your thoughts on Rui, and then going on into Brandon Clark and why you have him as a top 5 guy?
So my thought on Rui is that he has, I remember when we did the Rui Hachimura kind of profile, we looked at just Rui.
Yeah.
Early
People were
in the
still
season.
not happy about the question that I came up, which I'll be honest, the question was to get clicks, and I got you to click on it, but go on.
So he's been one of the most consistent players in college basketball all season long. I mean, if you look at what he's doing every single night, he's scoring, he's adding in rebounds, not a lot of assists, not a lot of blocks, not a lot of steals, but he's adding in where he needs to be. He's a scorer.
Yeah.
He scores. He's scoring 20 points a game. That's outstanding. He has been, and like I said, he's just consistent. There isn't this, well, he's got 20 here, then 7, then 9, then 30. He's very consistent. He's been very good, and that's helped his team stay consistent. Gonzaga's been a very consistent team all season long, and they are really looking to try and lock down a number 1 seed in the tournament. And they might just be able to do that. So that's why I like Rui. He's been great. He's been really good from three. He doesn't take a lot of threes, but he's been really good from three when he shoots. 46.7% from three. That's very good. Again, limited number of threes, but still good. And then 61% from the field. That's outstanding. But when I look at Brandon Clark, what do I see? What do I see from Brandon Clark? Well, I see a guy who is experienced. He's a junior. He's an experienced player. He can score. He gets a lot of rebounds. He's very efficient. He's solid from the free throw line. Not great, but solid. He could get better from three, for sure, especially when we're talking NBA. But he's a consistent shooter on the floor. Again, almost 70% from the field. Almost 70%, 68.8. This is another guy who is consistent night in, night out, and a reason why Gonzaga is getting wins. Exactly why Gonzaga is getting wins. He doesn't turn the ball over. He gets a lot of blocks. He's great defensively. This is a good player. This is a good player, and this is a good player on yes, a Gonzaga team that a lot of people will argue and say, they don't play anybody. I think that if you put him on a Duke team, I think that you would be putting him in the conversation of the big three. I do. I think that he is the number 2 power forward behind Zion. Yeah, and is that crazy? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But you just have to look at the stats. You just have to look at what he's meant to his team. He's been a great player right alongside Rui all season long.
And I agree with you. I'm going to say he is the second best power forward behind Zion as well. But the only reason I say that is I see Rui as more of a 3 at the next level than a 4. So because Rui's not a power forward in my mind, he'd be a small forward. That's why Brandon Clark to me would also be my second power forward as well. The thing I like about Brandon Clark is, and this is kind of, I'm going to love-hate with this. And the reason why is I wanted to put him in my top 10. The way that I had it kind of shaken down was I was looking at 4 guys. Ball, Darius Garland, Jackson Hayes, and Brandon Clark. And really, I would switch it one way and put them in one order. And then I would go, I'd look at something, look at this, look at that, and I'd go, no, I don't like that. And I'd switch it up. Basically, I was switching it up so much, I finally was like, fuck it. This is my big board, and this is where I have to leave it. But like Brandon Clark, I had at 12. I could have easily had him as high as 9 or 10 in my big board. And the reason why I like him so much is because not only, according to Real GM, he's got the second highest player efficiency rating in the country. He's a guy that has a motor. He's explosive, and that in the in transitions and cutoffs can lead to easy baskets at the next level. And he's a guy where, and I wonder yet again how this will translate over into the NBA. I wonder if a team is going to look at him, look at that motor, and go, hey, you know what? We could use a guy like this because he's not a guy that has to have his number called in order to impact a game. He can play defense. He's got that motor. He can get himself inserted into the game without being like, all right, we're getting the ball to Brandon. We got to get Brandon the ball to get him into this game. No, he's going to find ways to impact the game, whether or not he even has the ball originally and that the coach is calling his number, like I've said. And I wonder if that is going to be super appealing to NBA teams. Now, the only thing I do worry about with him is that he's 6'8", so like with defending, yes, I feel like he might be able to switch between 3s and 4s and defend either a small forward or a power forward. But the thing is, if he gets switched onto a center at the next level, he's not super tall, so he's not a guy that's going to be going body to body against true big boy centers at the next level. Any final thoughts you got about that before we move on into the big topic.
No.
The one that I think we're going to get into is Cam Reddish. And Cam Reddish, you talk about love or hate or love-hate relationships. Cam Reddish is the definition of that because I feel like same thing we said about Trey Jones is the same for Cam Reddish. When all three of the big Dukes are out there, go sit in the corner, Cam. We will get you the ball. When Zion's not on the floor, I feel like I see a different Cam Reddish, and he's a better Cam Reddish than when Zion's on the floor. And it's been kind of hot and cold since Zion has left. Zion got hurt February 20th against North Carolina. Cam Reddish in that game, 27 points, shot 4 of 12 from beyond the line, 10 of 23 in that game. Didn't have that bad of a game scoring-wise. Then the next game against Syracuse, I will say, his first time seeing Syracuse since I believe he had the flu the first time the teams met, he did not have a good game. He only had 5 points against Syracuse. Then in the last 2 against Virginia Tech and Miami, not terrible games. He's gotten to the line. He got to the line against Miami, 6 foul shots, although he only made 3 of them. And he had 17 and 19 respectively while grabbing boards in the last 3 games. What is your thought with Cam Reddish? Because this is the first time in our big boards you've had him outside the top 5.
Yeah, because he deserves to be. He deserves to be. Cam Reddish.
But why?
Well, I think that he's a very mediocre player. Mm-hmm. He's a mediocre player on a very good team, surrounded by good players who help him to not look so bad. Mm-hmm. And that's a very serious comment. And people may say, well, if that's the case, then why do you still have him at 7? Well, because he's still a good player, but when we're talking about the best of the best players, he's not up there. He's not up there with RJ Barrett. He's not up there with Zion Williamson. He's not up there with John Moran. He's not even that exciting of a player. He stands in a corner and shoots the ball. He doesn't move.
Whoop. I forgot to mute my computer.
That is okay. I am going to forgive you. He stands in the corner and he doesn't move, and he doesn't.
But
he doesn't do. Here's the thing, Ricky, is that his game is shoot, score, and if he cannot do that, he is shooting 36.5% from the field. Hold on. He is shooting 33.6% from 3. From 3, that's fine. But 36.5% from the field. He's only averaging 14 points. I mean, this is a guy on a Duke team that is thankful and lucky to be on this Duke team because, again, if you took him and you made him like a Romeo Langford where you threw him onto Indiana and he had to be the number 1 guy, at this point, I used to think,
so you're feeling differently than you did about Trey Jones.
He would be okay. But I don't know how he would be because he has been struggling all season long for the most part, and it's been hidden thanks to RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson.
I think we've got a similar conversation that we did about Trey Jones. The only difference is that I feel like, number 1, and yet again, don't know Cam personally, but I feel like, number 1, Trey Jones is taking to his role as the kind of facilitator, defensive, non-scorer a little bit easier than Cam Reddish is. Because when you looked at all 3 Dukies coming in, Zion's a highlight reel. RJ's a guy who can handle the ball, score at the basket, shoot from outside. He's said he's got that Mamba mentality. That's all you need to say. He's a Mamba out there. He's the guy with the ball. Put the game on my back. I want the ball in my hands. Cam Reddish, as I'm looking at his high school tape, most of his possessions, and yet again, I know you got to understand at high school, it's usually the best player with, like, whether they're going to be a power forward in the NBA, the best player handles the ball in high school. That's just how it is. But from what I'm seeing with Cam Reddish in his high school tape, compared to what I'm seeing at Duke, they're completely different games. It's not just stand in the corner, wait for RJ, wait for somebody to get you the ball. It's, hey, Cam, you're going to run this offense. And the thing that I feel is the same thing that we said about Trey Jones, same thing that we've said about Nasir Little in the past. You've brought it up. If you put Cam Reddish on a different team, any team that doesn't have Zion, doesn't have RJ, and he's not the number 3 Dookie, do we see a different Cam Reddish? Is it just the skills that he showed in high school? Coach K is not asking him to demonstrate those skills. And will it even be something where when we get to the combine, we get to Cam Reddish and he shows us something in the 5-on-5s, in the special drills that make us go, oh, what? He can do that? I didn't know Cam could do that. Where was that all year? Like, that to me is like, I'm sitting here wondering if that is what it's going to be like with Cam Reddish. Is he only giving you what he's giving you now because that's what Coach K is asking for? Or is it, hey, he was really good in high school, but against the college talent, he can't do what he did in high school. That's why he's doing what he did now. I don't think that, because obviously he can. He's shown us some flashes. It's just he hasn't been able to get into a rhythm because of having the number 1 and number 2 players from a recruiting class on your team.
I guess I'm just still so skeptical of, is he going to be able, could he go and be drafted and be a number 1? Could he be drafted by the Chicago Bulls and go and be their number 1 scorer, and the Bulls build a franchise around Cam Reddish? Now, is that a good example or a bad example? I don't know. I don't watch the NBA, but you tell me.
I'll throw it in there. It's a bad example because we already got Zach LaVine. He's our number 1. We already got Larry Markkinen.
I don't know. They're so bad. I don't even know who's on the team.
I'll change your Bulls. Cleveland. If Cleveland took him, because Cleveland, they don't get it. I know they got Colin Sexton, but he's not really a number 1. But that is a question, though. Can he be a number 1?
Can he do that? And clearly he shoots like he wants to be, but he doesn't make shots like he wants to be. That's the problem with Cam Reddish. There's been too many games.
Let me interject. Could it be the reason why is because since it's just he's not getting into a rhythm, basically. It's, hey, doing what I'm doing right now, I can't get into my rhythm like I used to when I was the guy with the ball, handling the ball for most of the possessions. Could that be it? Could it just be that he's not able to get into a rhythm because of what's going on with Duke, having both Zion, RJ out there at the same time?
Too many games like this, Ricky. 3 of 9. 4 of 12. 2 of 12. 4 of 12. 3 of 11. 1 of 7. 1 of 8. 4 of 9. 3 of 12. 4 of 16. 1 of 11. 4 of 13. 2 of 15. 2 of 11. That's a lot of games. That's a lot of inconsistency.
Too many missed shots.
Now you could say, you could bring in your rhythm argument for sure. That makes sense. But I don't want to make excuses for him forever. He needs to be able to separate himself from the pack, and he needs to be able to separate himself from his teammates to show, hey, I'm a solid scorer, and guess what? I'm clutch. I'm making a lot of big-time shots. He's missing a lot of shots. I'm not necessarily saying they're big-time misses, but just a lot of misses.
Yeah, and for me, obviously, I've got Cam Reddish in my top 5 because I haven't said his name yet. The one thing I will say, and this is for my big board especially because I haven't had this happen yet, you did, is I feel like the more we get to, if we don't get to the combine, and if I don't see something from Cam Reddish at the combine that makes me go, all right, it's because you were on Duke. If I don't get that moment or like a, whoa, where was this all season kind of a moment from Cam, by the time we get to our 5.0, I might do this and switch Cam Reddish and Jarrett Culver. And the reason why is both of them are, to me, similar types of players right now in college where the two things we look at from both of them that are their biggest strengths is the three ball and is their defensive ability. And I think the more that Cam kind of struggles with consistency, eventually, if we get to, like, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to wait till probably the combine, because the question I was going to ask you is there anything until the combine that Cam Reddish can do to answer your question? I'm going to say no. Like, there's nothing that he can do this season.
Unless he takes over in the tournament. Unless he takes over in the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament.
But do you think that's going to happen?
No, probably,
I don't.
No, probably not. But if he can take over in those games and come up with some big-time shots, then yes, maybe he needs to make some shots that are memorable, that send Duke to overtime, that send Duke to a win.
A Charles Matthews type of shot.
He needs to do something like that to get himself on the map again. Because I'm not saying that he's but this is where, like you said before we said before we came on,
think about
you said
how
with
his stock shot up when he made that shot against Florida State. That last second shot beat Florida State. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, Cam Reddish," and then it kind of fell
like you
off.
said for NFL. You said it's much easier because you have quarterbacks, and they're usually going to be the ones that are super important.
Yeah,
but you said with NBA, it's like splitting hairs. Well, this is where I'm trying to split the hair and be so difficult with Cam Reddish is because he is a good player. Yes, I am not going to question, is he a good player? But is he a great player? Is he one of those guys that next level he's going to be a star? Or is he just going to be a really good player on the team? Can he take over a team? Like you said, can he take over Cleveland and be a guy that they build around? And Cam Reddish needs to be able to get his name back out there again as Cam Reddish, not the guy who's the other part of the big three. Because we know about Barrett, we talk about Barrett, and everyone talks about Zion. What are we doing to talk about Cam Reddish? And what's our first thought when we think Cam Reddish? Mine, inconsistency.
Yeah,
it's not this big shot or that big shot. It's inconsistent play. Cam Reddish needs to try and change that.
Like, it's funny. You mentioned how you're like, oh, it's Zion Williamson, like, everyone talks about Zion. I'm the guy that has said, and this is going to happen, I am saving money for it to happen. If the Bulls get the number one pick, what I am going to do, if his name gets called by the Bulls at the NBA draft, on our draft live stream, the second it gets announced, I am buying myself a customized Bulls jersey, number 1, Williamson on the back. And I will wear it every single fast break from now until the rest of eternity. Basically, I have made that claim. That is what I've said about Zion. But you're right. I feel like the part that I'm going to say is right about what you said is he needs some magical moment, I'm going to say. And it kind of sucks because it's recency bias in our society. But it's like, think about that Florida State game where Zion left with an injury. Cam hit that big shot. Everyone's like, oh my God, look at Cam Reddish. Look at what he's able to do. Big shot taker, the PTP or the primetime player. And then ever since then, it's like, oh, well, same old Cam. Same old inconsistent stat sheets from Cam Reddish. And I agree with you. In March, he has to have a big game that propels Duke to a victory. Maybe I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because I feel like he's being overmassed by two guys that it's like alphas trying to, like, neither of them are going to eclipse Zion. So RJ and Cam got to kind of fight with themselves, and he's not winning that battle against RJ. But at the same time, they're trying to win games because that's what Coach K and his job is, to get these guys to win games. It's a lot to pack together. But the last thing I want to kind of talk about in this range are the centers, because they're kind of similar to the point guards that we talked about earlier, where we've got a couple. We've got the guy who fell at first, and now he's back to being the top because people are like, well, you know what? What he brings to the game is too much, and we'll see what his medicals are like at the combine. Your number one is you've got Ball. Then at number 2, many people have Jackson Hayes, the center out of Texas. Then you have other guys like Bruno Fernando from the Maryland Terrapins. You have Gorga Batazde, the Georgian-born center from overseas. You also have Jonte Porter, who I list him as a forward, but can be listed as a center. But then you also have guys like Daniel Gafford, who we've talked about, who was in last year's draft, decided to come back for this year. Charles Bassey, who were in our 1.0 big boards. And then a guy like Sagaba Konate, who was one of Dave's sleepers on our fast break. I want to ask you what goes through your mind with the centers. More importantly, I want to start at the top and work our way down. Ball, Jackson Hayes. Why do you have Jackson Hayes ahead of Ball? Is it just the injury and that's it?
I think that's a big part of it. He's with Ball being out, only playing 9 games. Hayes playing 20 more games than him. Ball was off to a hot start.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was averaging 21 points per game in those 9 games, so he was solid. When you look at Jackson Hayes, his points have come off, but this is a guy who, when I say his points have come off, they're not anywhere near what Ball was. But I think Ball may have come down a little bit as well. But we're looking at a 10-point kind of guy per game. But he's getting the blocks. He shoots really well from the field. He's extremely efficient. 73% free throw shooter. Doesn't really turn the ball over. I think that he is the type of guy who is going to help his team win. Now, he needs to be, I think, a little bit better in terms of rebounds. He could get a lot better there. Like, the fact that he's not necessarily close to a double-double per game is, for me, when you're looking at a big guy, you want to have him getting some rebounds and getting some boards. So I'd like to see the rebounds go up there, but I still think that Hayes is a solid player, solid guy at the 5, but Ball is special. Without that injury, I would be very excited and intrigued to see where Ball would be in terms of his stats, in terms of what he's done all season long. And then when you go over to Bruno Fernando, this is another guy. He's averaging a double-double per game, shoots really well from the floor, really good from the free throw line, and these are some, big guys that are shooting pretty well from the free throw line. That's kind of certainly a positive there. Defensive rebounds is a big thing for Fernando as well. He has a little bit more of a couple more turnovers per game than Hayes does. But when all things are said and done, the guy that I think is going to end up coming out of this group of centers is probably going to be Ball.
Yeah,
and that's who it's going to be at the end. I know I have Jackson Hayes higher in this big board, but I think Ball is going to be the one at the end of the day that comes out on top.
See, and for me, the thing is, the number one reason why I have Ball ranked above Jackson Hayes is 3-point percentage alone. Like, although he was only shooting an average of 3 per game, Ball was hitting over half of his threes every single game. He was shooting 52% from the field. Jackson Hayes doesn't take threes.
Doesn't take 3. Didn't take 1.
And the question that I have for Jackson Hayes, and I'm going to throw this to you to see what your thoughts are with it, is Jackson Hayes good? Yes. But when I look at centers, and I'm just looking at centers in the NBA that don't really shoot the 3. Most of their heights are Clint Capella, 6'10", 240. You've got Rudy Gobert, 7'1", 245. You've got Mitchell Robinson, who is a younger player out of them. Clint Capella is 24. Rudy Gobert is 26. Mitchell Robinson is 20. He's 7'1", 240 pounds. And then LaMarcus Aldridge, who has started to shoot threes more later in his career, and are hitting them, 6'11", 260. The thing that I worry about, or my biggest question with Jackson Hayes is your 6'11", 220. Is he going to be able to bulk up and put on the weight to maybe be, because I don't think he'll be able to be a guy inside without a three ball if he stays at 6'11", 220. He's going to have to be closer to, let's say, Clint Capella, like 6'11", 240, 250 kind of a range. Is that what Jackson Hayes is? Hey, I'm going to be an inside guy. I just need to bulk up a little bit before I get to play or while I'm in my first year in the NBA.
So, Ball, he's 7'2" and 222. That's what they're listing him as. Do you think it's those couple of inches taller? Is that big of a difference, especially when he's those couple of inches taller and he's still the same as Hayes is in terms of weight? I think it's different. And the reason why I say different is I'm not really ragging on Hayes for his height. Like the 6'11" is fine to me. Because right now, like people have his wingspan listed as 7'4", so he is a wider wingspan than he's supposed to. Like average people only have the wingspan of their normal height, as I throw my hands out like that's going to do something. But with Ball, the question is, because he's 7'2", how is his feet, his knees, his back, like all of these things going to hold up? Like he is also a guy that needs to bulk up. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's a little different because of where I think he's going to fit in with a team. Like, yes, he's going to be a center, but I think Ball is going to be somebody that spaces the floor. Because he's got that three, he's not going to be down low banging bodies all the time. Like on defense, yeah, he might have to bang some bodies down low, but on offense, hey, I can step out for that three, so you can use me in the pick and roll. I don't have to sit there and be down in the low post all the time. Whereas Jackson Hayes, I don't have that three ball to my game. So I'm going to be more of that guy who is the closer to the basket, down low, in the paint, banging bodies kind of a guy. That's why I look at the weight and I go, is he going to be one that kind of bulks up? And I am honestly intrigued to see how Bruno Fernando and like guys like Batazde kind of come on in this later kind of a draft class, because I feel like this is something where like Fernando is even a little bit shorter than Jackson Hayes, but he's got a little bit of a bigger wingspan than Hayes, but he's got more poundage onto him. He's got 13 more pounds on him than a Jackson Hayes does. And when you look at Batazde, similar height, but he's 250 compared to the 220 of Jackson Hayes. So like that's one thing that I look at and I go, at the next level, is that something that's going to be a detriment? Because like Batazde, that's the big thing international to college, is he's not going up against college kids. He's going up against European pros, and he's going up against the Euro pros overseas with international. Do you have anything that you think we need to add with the centers, or anything that we haven't brought up with them that you're like, you know what, we need to say this? No, I think we got it covered.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think down below in the comment section. The centers, to me, that's the interesting one, because I feel like you were right. If Ball's healthy, he's running away with it, and he's the number one, probably even a top 5 pick if he was 100% healthy. Now it's like top 10, a little bit out of the top 10. But let us know what you think about the centers. Let us know what you think of Cam Reddish. That's the kind of big one that we had to unpack here. And then obviously check out the Rui Hachimura Sekou Demboya segment that we did on the fast break.